Hi everybody, Danielle here, and I am back live with you for another day of this 4-week Facebook Live challenge where I will be hopping onto this page once a day every week for 4 weeks, and this is our second week, second day. So getting there close to halfway-ish at the end of this week. And really the goal here is to talk about all of the lessons learned over the past 4 years running the Sedge. So just at the end of May, beginning of June, marked the 4-year anniversary for the Sedge. And because I love to work with changemakers like yourselves who are implementing and dreaming up and taking action on impactful businesses, I thought it would be worthwhile to share some of my biggest learning and lessons over the years so that hopefully you can learn a little bit, see some red flags if they might be showing up in your own path as you listen to some of the stories and lessons learned that I'm sharing. Or, just know that everybody goes through some of these ups and downs and the path is not always clear as you're in it. And I think looking back, you can get a lot of insights from what you've learned along the way. And so that's what I want to share with you guys so that you can apply that in your own work right now. So today I want to talk about staying focused and getting things done. So this is a huge challenge, especially if you're new to running yourself, like to running your own business where you're in charge. The buck stops with you, and if you aren't organized or thoughtful in how you are planning your days, weeks, months, and years, you can find yourself stopping at one point and going, whoa, what happened to the last year? I did not accomplish what I thought I was trying to accomplish. A lot of things got in the way, or like what happened to the last year or the last 6 months? And how can I make it better going forward? So learning how to be a really effective planner as an entrepreneur and as a change maker, it's a learning curve. And I think some people come more naturally to planning and others don't. But either way, you can really find a method or a system that works for you, works in your work style, and embrace that as part of your job leading your social enterprise. So what I want to talk about today is related to the second year in business with the Sedge. And it was an interesting time because I actually am a pretty good planner. I love to write things out and make lists and, think of time frames and how am I going to fit everything together. So I wouldn't have guessed that I'm not a great planner. But in this second year, looking back, that was a big lesson that I learned. Was time management as a solo entrepreneur, a solo founder. And which I kind of skipped this story. Last week I talked all about year one, and I talked about being on a team with 2 other co-founders, and we worked together on the Sedge when it first started in down in Santiago, Chile, in the business program there, accelerator program. But when we came back to Canada, we actually went our separate ways, and I continued on working on the Sedge on my own, which was fine. Like it all worked out for all of us. But it did leave me in this kind of lonely, floaty place where, I had plans for what I wanted to work on in that second year. And there was nobody really holding me accountable except for myself. I had no team to answer to or to discuss timelines with and projects with. I, at the time, didn't have any mentors lined up to, bounce ideas off of. So I really was alone on this little island, trying to work on the Sedge. And so I'm going to tell you a story about how, what I learned about time management in that year. And yeah, so it's interesting because I am a good planner, but I found myself in this situation where I really had dropped the ball on taking initiative to lead and implement my own plans. So I don't want you to fall into that category as well. So yeah, essentially in this second year, what happened was I was involved in a lot of different community projects. So I got back to Canada, was getting settled in there, and realized that while I was gone in South America, there was an amazing upsurge of social innovation enthusiasm and community building events and initiatives and organizations that were very connected to some of the goals that I had with the Sedge. And these conversations around social innovation and social entrepreneurship were finally happening in my city. Whereas before I left, there, people were interested in it maybe, but there was no venues to really connect with other people locally, which is partly why the Sedge ended up being a global initiative when I first started, because that's what I was seeking. I was seeking that connection with other change makers as well. So it was a wonderful thing to come home and realize, wow, there's all this stuff happening here. There's people connecting. There's people having these conversations that I want to have too. And so this is perfect. This is what I want to do. Let's get involved. And so I ended up actually taking on a few volunteer roles. And I think it was 3 major projects or events that I got involved with when I got back. And they were all definitely connected to the big picture of the Sedge. So logically, it made sense. It's like, okay, these are the people I want to connect with. There's a lot of action starting up here, and I want to be a part of it. They need people to help with certain projects and fulfill certain volunteer roles. And I'm a good person to help with that. So let me do it. So here's what happened though. Over, the next, 3 to 6 months, I looked up and realized, whoa, hold on a second. I haven't really hit any major milestones with my own work in the past little while. And maybe part of the problem was that I hadn't outlined what milestones I was trying to reach. That's problem number 1. And we're going to talk more about that. But really what it came down to was I was letting myself get pulled into different directions. And not that all these causes weren't worthy of my attention and time. They 100% were. They were wonderful things happening in the community. And I was excited to be a part of it. But what I realized when I looked up 3 to 6 months later is, whoa, I've been helping a lot of other initiatives move forward, but what about mine? And here's the thing that I realized is that there's a lot of other people who could support those projects and that work in different ways. They had a lot of, skill sets and enthusiasm to be a part of those established things that needed that manpower or woman power. But the Sedge, my own thing, only I could really be responsible and be in charge of leading that forward and keeping myself accountable to it, because I was the only one who was part of it. It didn't have a life of its own without me. So if I'm not 100% focused on moving it forward and creating a structure and a space for other people to get involved, nothing else was going to happen with it. And so what I really realized after committing so much time to these other volunteer projects was that, other people can help with those projects, can lend a hand and be volunteers in different ways. But only I can work on the Sedge at this point in time. And it needs that attention. It needs that nurturing to grow to a point where maybe then I could step back and work on other things that interest me. But it was too much too soon. Instead of spreading myself super thin, again, into really great initiatives, but not ones that were moving my own milestones forward. And if I wasn't moving those forward, nobody else is, right? So this was a big wake-up call. And part of what I realized when I, started to think, whoa, okay, I'm doing a lot of really fun stuff and it's great, but it doesn't seem to leave much time for really focusing on accomplishing these other goals that I have for the Sedge. And so what I actually started to do was track my time. And I went back into my calendar and I, added up all of the meetings I had been to, all of the commuting. I think one project, we were meeting downtown like once a week. So there was parking fees. And I mean, it's all good. But when I added it up, it ended up being a ton of time. It was probably like between 10 and 20 hours a week for, quite a few months that were solely on these volunteer projects. Again, kind of connected into my work, but not directly moving my own milestones forward or moving forward to achieve those milestones, those goals. And so that was a huge wake-up call, because really what I had been doing is not prioritizing the goals of my own organization, my own project that I had a very deep purpose for, but was not connecting that into my everyday action. I was letting other initiatives take over my energy, and therefore leaving not very much for the sedge. So this reminds me of, you guys may have heard of a story, I think it was first mentioned by Stephen Covey, or maybe he got it from somewhere else, but this idea of putting the big rocks in the jar first. So in your life, if you're thinking of all the different things you want to be involved with, and if you fill up a jar, like a limited amount of space, with, all the medium-sized rocks, let's say second-tier priorities that you have in your life, you'll find that you won't be able to fit in the big rocks after, because they'll be taking up too much room. But if you flip that on the other side and take those bigger stones, those bigger rocks, and put them in your jar first, then it's actually easier to fill in the smaller stones and then gravel and then sand, and it fills in all the little gaps. And then finally you realize you can fit everything in as long as you have your main priorities in first. So it's just a really good metaphor to think of, to realize the importance of making sure your main thing is the main thing, and that it truly is a priority in your day and in your plan. So there's, a lesson learned from someone who thought they were a good planner and then realized, maybe I missed the mark. So what I started to do to switch things around, or to reprioritize, and this is what I would recommend you guys do as well. If you find yourself in this position where you're not making the progress towards your goals that you wanted to, or you're feeling overwhelmed and like your to-do list is just crazy, but you're having trouble really seeing momentum in the thing that's most important to you. And that would be, so one, track your time like I did. And then you might have a light bulb moment of, okay, am I leaving enough time to focus my energy and passion on the thing that I say is most important to me? And you might find that if you're letting yourself being pulled in different directions, you don't leave any time for yourself to focus on that main thing. So first thing, track your time. You might be surprised. The second thing is to really get clear on your priorities. So if you track your time and you realize, I really am spending lots of time on my main thing, then that's great. So you are making that a priority, and maybe you have other challenges that are preventing you from seeing success and momentum in that, but maybe planning and prioritizing is not the problem. So that would be good. But I think more often than not, you'll find that maybe your priorities are not aligned with how much time you're spending on each thing, and putting those big rocks in your calendar first. What are the most important things you want to work on? So that would be number 2. Really get clear on that milestone and that goal that you want to achieve, and make sure it's front and center. You can even write yourself a sticky note or a sign to put up in your office, like, this is my main goal. I need to be always thinking about this first. After that's taken care of, after it's received its food and water, its nurturing, then I can add in other things that are also important to me, but not a priority like that one. So that would be the second thing. And then you might find, like I did, that I had a bunch of things in my calendar, a bunch of commitments that were not, I just literally couldn't do it all in order to still achieve my goal with the sedge, and focus on growing that to a place where it could sustain itself. And so here's what you have to do now, which is a little tough, depending if you're a people pleaser, which I might be sometimes, and that is learning to say no, and to back out of commitments, not back out of them, but slowly funnel away the things that you maybe don't really have time for, in order to create the space for the less urgent, but more important goals that you have for your own business. So that's what I ended up doing with my calendar. some of the projects naturally came to an end. And as much as I would have loved to stay working with them, I had to step down. And, you know, it's kind of a bummer. If you're someone who loves to be involved in all these different things, you want to be involved in them. And sometimes it's hard to say no and to step down and let somebody else take on that role. But really, that's where that thinking, I realized someone else can do these roles really well, if not better than me, because they have, you know, more time or more attention or a better skill set for that role. And only I can work on my own company. So I need to prioritize that, hands down. So thinking of it like that really helped me say no to some things that were still important to me. And you can always be involved to a lesser extent, potentially, right? So if there's a charity or a nonprofit that you want to support, maybe instead of a larger volunteer role, like on a board or running an event, for example, maybe you can say, listen, I love you guys. I'm going to support you as your biggest fan. I'm going to come to your events, you know, as a participant. I'm going to share your work with my network and help spread the word, but I can't necessarily help you plan anything or be on the ground implementing for you. And that's still a great way you can be involved, but have a lesser time commitment. So those are some of the things that I had to do in the second year. And I was really surprised how much time I was spending on these other things, mainly because, you know, my day didn't have the structure like a 9-to-5 job has. I didn't have a boss asking me to deliver things to them, right? So it's kind of easy to let yourself lose time in these other things that are not achieving your goals. And the fourth thing that I think you should do if you find yourself in this situation is to really sit down and articulate your goals, those milestones. So if you're not super clear on what those goals are and what you need to do to achieve them, you need, then other things will seep in and take over your time. So in order to put those big rocks in the jar first, you need to know what the rocks are and you need to grab them and put them in the jar. That means you have articulated your impact goals in using the SMART framework, where it's specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. So set your SMART goal, but don't just leave it there. Then you need to outline your action steps in order to achieve that goal. So when you break it down into milestones, or if it's a goal for the end of the year, can you break it down by a month? What does that look like? And what are those baby steps that you're going to take each and every day? Kind of work backwards from the big picture to mapping out, here's my Tuesday. Here's what's important for me to get done today. And if I can do that every day, then I will achieve that larger goal. But it doesn't happen by accident. You have to be really purposeful and systematic about it and outline all of those steps so that you can say no to other things. And that's what you have to do if you're in charge of leading your business, right? And like I said, sometimes it can become natural to some people or take a little bit more practice for other people. But one of the things that is really cool that came out of this was a more conscious practice of planning, not just setting goals and making to-do lists, because the to-do lists are the granular daily thing, and the goals are kind of the big pie on the sky idea. You need to connect the two into a step-by-step plan and really look at each quarter, each week, each month, and then bring it down to the day. So I started to practice that type of planning, and it really helped a lot. And not only to say no to other projects that I still cared about, but I knew this needed to happen in order to achieve goals for the Sedge that nobody else could do except for me, right? So that's a helpful way to think about it. And since then, over the years, I've been using that system for a while, and Solène does as well. And we actually mapped out our whole planning system into a planner just for change makers. So it's called the Change Makers GPS Planner. And what it does is help you outline that dream impact goal that you have for your social enterprise, and then break it down into milestones, and then help you track it and get your daily actions in order. And then also have checkpoints every week, every month, every quarter to assess how you're doing on that track of achieving that goal, and whether you might need to reassess or readjust along the way. So yeah, we both use that system now, and it's helped so much. In fact, last year and this year, there's been a lot of moving parts so not only the Sedge, but 1 year ago, we launched Changemakers Association as well. So we each have two businesses, each of our own, and then Changemakers together. And there's a lot of moving parts. And I still do volunteer, but it's a lot more conscious in how much time am I giving and committing, and does that fit into my jar with my big rocks in there already? And it's, like I said, it's been tough to say no to some things, but you just got to keep that perspective of achieving that bigger goal that only you can achieve. And nobody else is going to check in with you and ask how you're doing. If you're leading your own social enterprise or your own business, it stops with you. So if you can't lead yourself forward to make progress, then nobody else is going to do that for you. So it's really a foundational skill as a leader for your social enterprise as an entrepreneur. And I know that you guys watching have a big heart and you want to contribute and help other things in a lot of different ways, and you want to share your gifts in so many ways. But I urge you to learn how to focus and prioritize and make that really actionable plan so that your dream goal will become inevitable. And that's what we talk about in the Changemakers GPS Planner. And just writing down your SMART goal is not enough for it to be inevitable. You need to take that SMART goal, break it down, working backwards to your daily actions, and then continually check in, monitor your progress, and readjust as you go. So those are some of my planning tips and my tips for making sure you stay focused, stay on track, and, give back to your community in the ways that are going to support your life overall, and not take away from some of those big dream goals that you have for your social enterprise. And I guess the other thing, which I could talk about more maybe in another post on another day, is also making sure that you leave time for yourself and your family and your friends. So I didn't really talk about that as much here. But again, the more things you pile on your plate, the less time you have to really take care of yourself, to leave white space so that you can stay creative and allow new ideas and opportunities to come into your sphere. And actually, I'm going to talk more about this next week when I talk about year 3 of running the Sedge, because last year was just crazy in terms of time management. So I'm going to talk more about that, and refilling your well so that you can keep going and really take care of yourself so that you don't burn out and crash. Because even if you have a great plan, if you're stuffing way too much stuff into your plan, you won't be able to sustain it, and then it will all blow up. And that's happened to me too. So that will be another lesson learned for you guys coming next week. So thanks for tuning in. Hi, if you're watching live or on the replay. Glad that you're here. And just to wrap up, I will be back every day for the rest of this week talking about lessons learned in year 2. And one of the kind of bigger lessons that I want to talk about is running a pilot program, which I did in the second year, and how to validate your idea and learn from the actions that you're taking early on in developing your products and your services. So that's all for today. I hope that was helpful. I'll pop the link to the planner in the comments so that you can check it out. It is for sale. And we also sell the Changemakers GPS Planner with our 6 video training straight out of Changemakers Association. So it started as a members only, it started as a module that we did in December of 2016 for our members, and they've just had so much success with it using the planner. And we outline all of the steps and kind of the thinking behind the planner in the module, the 6 videos, and go through, how to use the planner to its best ability. And you can use it over and over because it's a printable PDF. Also, you don't have to wait for it to be shipped. You can download it right away. So yeah, check that out and let me know, what are your biggest learnings from planning and running your own business? I would love to get everybody's input on that. Okay, we'll talk soon and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye.